Hi, this is David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm by myself in the studio today. Unfortunately, my co-host Bill is feeling a little ill today. But I've got a lot of topics to cover, so we'll get right into it. So let's start out with talking about this 3,000-mile battery. So a Chinese group says they've come up with a way to 10x current battery ranges. At first, I was worried we were talking about having a battery that weighed 40,000 pounds, but it doesn't seem to be the case here. So this revolutionary battery could boost EV range to over 3,000 miles on a single charge. Now, this is theory. They haven't actually been able to do this. But this is quite interesting. This is from researchers from Pohang University of Science and Technology have unveiled a groundbreaking technique to amplify the energy storage capacity of batteries tenfold. This development not only advances battery tech, but could also reshape the entire electric vehicle landscape. Now, the way this would work, so currently in a lithium battery, there's a lot of graphite used with the anodes, and it's the primary component responsible for storing power during the charging phase and then discharging it when the battery is in use. Now, graphite is the predominant material. However, there are materials like silicon that inherently possess a far greater energy capacity than graphite, making them potentially better suited for more efficient battery design. The challenge has been stabilizing a battery that utilizes a silicon anode. One of the primary reasons is that the internal reactions from the battery cause silicon to expand, posing a threat to the battery's stability and safety. Oh, that'd be just great. We need more exploding batteries. Not that they explode, but that they can catch fire. This is with lithium. Now, one of the things is there's a whole lot of work going on sodium ion batteries. CATL or Cattle is the biggest battery maker, and they're building a plant to provide the silicon ion or sodium ion batteries already. Now, this group's innovative approach involved devising a special binding material capable of preventing a high-capacity silicon anode from expanding. The result is a lithium battery that boasts staggering 10 times the capacity of its graphite anode counterparts. Now, it was Professor Sujin Park and Yoon Soo Kim of Post Tech. Now, let's see what we've got here. They're not alone in the global race to redefine battery tech. Numerous teams worldwide are diligently working towards more sustainable and efficient solutions. Let's see. A Chinese company has already pioneered an EV battery leveraging sodium. Well, I've already mentioned this. NASA has been working with an enhanced solid-state battery, which can be both lighter and hold more power than conventional lithium batteries. Anyways, it's good to see technology coming in the batteries because people always talk about the lack of range, different things. Obviously, if you have a battery that has range of more than 1,000 miles, then who cares if it loses some power in winter or, you're going to have any problem going on a trip. Okay, so the thing I see a lot lately is people telling me how bad that EV sales are dying. And this has been reported in the news a lot. Now, these numbers here, this is from Clean Technica. These are numbers since 2019. Since 2019, ICE cars, their sales are down 14%. That's a pretty big drop. EV sales are up 385%. Now, what's happened in that time span in those 4 years, or a little bit over 4 years, is EV exponential growth has slowed down, but they haven't slowed down. It's still growing faster year over year than it was before. So this is a quite interesting piece. So this here is giving us the initial year, 47% going into 2020. By 2021, it was 142%, then a whopping 356% through 22, and then through 23, as you can see, it grew a lot here in 22, but in 23, it just grew a little bit more. Okay, still growth, not the same. But at the time span where EV sales barely grew, gas car sales fell by 14%. So in that 1 year, and so that's a pretty big deal. And that includes, well, this is cumulative, but that includes a 10% growth in gas car sales from 2019 to 2020. So it makes it interesting to see where this is going. Here it is expressed in numbers, and this is for US battery electric vehicles versus ICE vehicles. And so while in those 4 years there was an increase of 1.3 million, or I'm sorry, 888,000 battery vehicles, there was a reduction in sales of 2.3 million gas vehicles. So cars are piling up on lots. I saw something recently where Stellantis, for instance, and Jeep, and Infiniti and Genesis are having issues with just regular gas cars piling up on the lots. They're not selling, and they have something like 6 months of inventory already made, and the sales just aren't keeping up. So that's kind of interesting. Now, this next article is actually from the Motley Fool, and it's talking about some stuff about Rivian. So Rivian obviously makes cars and trucks, or trucks, I'm sorry, not cars and trucks. They make trucks and SUVs. Has had some success, and they actually had the stock surged a little bit this week, but they've been trading somewhere around $15, $16 for um, a few weeks. They had shot up to about 26 back in December, and they fell back down to around 16. And I know in our Friday show we were talking about we think they've probably bottomed out, but that remains to be seen where they may end up. But the Motley Fool here is talking about how they like Tesla now, and Tesla has gone down to a much better price. Now, once again, this is a reflection of the views of Motley Fool, and I'm just sharing this here. So, anyways, Tesla has a whole bunch of distinct advantages. One of the things a lot of people, when they think of Tesla, they only think of the fact that they sell cars, but they make a massive amount of money. They make billions of dollars off of selling carbon credits to other car manufacturers that aren't meeting certain government mandated standards. On top of that, they also have their own energy division. They have massive energy production or energy storage in Australia, and they recently replaced the last coal-fired power plant in Hawaii with a Tesla battery farm. And this essentially provides energy that's stored from renewables. So one of the problems with renewable energy is that other than nuclear, it typically, like obviously, solar works best when the sun's out. Wind, for some reason, is most efficient between midnight and 2 a.m. And so what it does is the battery storage farm stores energy and has it available when it's needed the most. Now, what's interesting to look at Tesla is sitting on 29 billion in cash. In 23, their net income, that's profit, was $15 billion. I mean, they are killing it. They sell the #1 car in the world, the Tesla Model Y. They've got a lot of things going on, but they're also about to start selling their self-driving technology. They make good money on data sales. So they've really come up with some other ways to make money other than just producing automobiles. And as Elon Musk likes to say, they're really a tech company that just happens to sell cars. And for a while, they were valued that way. But over the last couple of years, the stock market has been adjusting them to seem more like they are simply a car company. And when in reality, a lot of their profits and numbers come from other areas. Let's see here. Another thing that's kind of interesting, there's some talk about how the Tesla Cybertruck can now power your home in case of an outage. Now, this is interesting because we've talked about vehicle to grid, different things, because obviously the battery in an EV is very large. Typically, a lot of your longer range vehicles have at least 100 kilowatt-hour battery, and some of these are even larger than that. The Hummer EV has almost a 200 kilowatt-hour battery. That's storing a lot of energy. A 100 kilowatt-hour battery could power your house for like three days, typical home. So, anyways, then there's talk here. This is coming from Electric, that the Cybertruck has bidirectional charging capabilities. It can work as essentially a huge electric power bank should your home lose power in a storm or local blackout. Now, if you were using this as a contractor, obviously you could power things on the job site as well. And that's an advantage of having the electric truck and not needing a generator on site. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Probably with engineer Mike tomorrow, we'll probably discuss this a little bit more. Now, in Canada, Ford has slashed the price of the Mach-E. They call it the Mustang Mach-E, and it basically is a crossover SUV, and it directly competes with the Tesla Model Y. With the price cut, which is the equivalent of about 3,700 US, it was 5,000 Canadian. It brings the Mach-E down to slightly below the price of the Model Y, which is its biggest competitor. So this is kind of an interesting piece of news. It's good to see Ford maybe being able to compete there. Now, the thing is, Ford still has to get their costs in line because Tesla makes money on the Model Y, and Ford is yet to really come through. On another topic, we were discussing Rivian. Rivian's also announced some price cuts. And let's see, they lowered the starting price on both the R1T and the R1S, which is probably why their stock went up a little bit this week. The Rivian R1T, which is the truck, now starts at $71,700, and the R1S, which is the SUV, starts at $76,700. And they've debuted a mid-range battery pack. So they're trying to also produce some other products that might have a different battery pack because of the predominantly big cost on an EV. Now, my last topic is about Australia. And I seem to get a lot of EV news from Australia. This is talking about the electric vehicle driver reveals the #1 problem for Aussie owners. Now, this is a non-Tesla EV issue. And if there's a couple of big issues in the whole EV space. One is addressing how apartment dwellers get power, and the other is addressing the charging infrastructure and its failure rate. So it's one thing to be able to be able to look at your apps when you're with Tesla. The car kind of helps you, lets you know, when you put it in the GPS where you're headed to on a trip. It tells you, hey, you need to charge here, and we're going to get this much power at this station, and then we're going to have you charge somewhere else. And it's possible for a really long gap, they might have you charge higher than 80%, but usually they only have you charge enough that you can go on to the next charger. So that way, when you get home, you kind of optimized your trips. You spend the least amount of time sitting at charging stations. But when you're dealing with other companies' chargers, which cars that aren't on the Tesla network, then you're at the mercy of whether the chargers work or not. And this is probably the biggest issue. And this is about Trevor Long, who also has his own podcast on EVs, bought a Ford e-Transit van and did a trip around New South Wales to test some of Australia's charging networks. So he knew that he was going to have some issues potentially. And so the #1 problem with the electric charging network, I've driven 120 kilometers to this charger, here which was on the maps, and none of it works. That's not a good situation to be in. Now, one nice thing is an EV can plug out of just a regular electric plug. It's just you're only going to add about 5 miles every hour. That's not going to be a real fun time if you really have to get somewhere. But it's just that there's other possibilities other than normal charging. But if you're out, you certainly don't want that inconvenience of waiting for your car to charge up. Now, there's always a real risk that one simply will not be working when you get there to an EV charger and you get stuck. This lack of or unreliability, more specifically of the highway charging network, doesn't surprise me. Unfortunately, we now have enough charging locations. There's always another option, but it's unacceptable in these early days of EV adoption that these kind of problems exist. And the different providers of charging stations are not growing fast enough. The charging infrastructure is growing with government incentives, but not fast enough to outpace the sales of electric cars. Tesla has this right. That company spent the time and money building the single best charging network on the planet. In Australia, they have more chargers per location than any other network by some margin, and they continue to build, update, and grow. Let's see, we've got a couple other points here. The process of building a national network with the Australian government across the national highway network focused on connection of regional communities. As part of the investment, they recently released a controversial off-grid electric vehicle charger prototype, and it is a backup diesel-powered generator that switches on when the solar power panels aren't producing enough power and battery levels are low, specifically after several overcast days. Oh, that's interesting. Now, but anyways, that's all the news I had for today. I appreciate everybody listening into the show today, and please like if you enjoyed the content and leave me a comment. Let me know what you'd like to see next or what you liked or didn't like, and hope to see you all back here tomorrow.